Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast, friends. It's Kim Skorupski here at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas, where you may have heard about a 17-foot seawall to protect the island after the 1900 storm designed by Colonel Robert of Robert's Rules of Order fame. I mean, you've heard of the Robert's Rules of how to run a meeting. I had no idea that Colonel Robert designed our 17-foot seawall. So there you go, just another little piece of trivia given to me by our provost, Dr. Charles Mouton, when I was trying to elevate Galveston. I said, give me some trivia. Well, friends, I'm looking at a new colleague and friend and one of our leaders here at UTMB, Dr. Nausheen Jamal. Hi, Nausheen.
Hi, it's such a pleasure to be here, Kim.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Nausheen. She is a professor and the Harry Carothers Wiess Chair of the Department of Otolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery. She recently came to UTMB from UT Rio Grande Valley, where she was the department chair there. Let me tell you, I first met Dr. Jamal when I came here in August. Dr. Jamal was one of the first faculty members I met, and I was immediately taken with her because of her leadership presence. She was very committed to growing community in her new department and was looking for some ideas about how to gather and grow her team of faculty members and staff and a lot of different divisions and departments and specialties. And so was very much aware of opportunity to bring the team together. And so Dr. Jamal and I met a number of times. I mean, she was very, very involved in the planning of a rehab. So it ended up being a retreat weekend. So we had a lot of great experiences. We had some great time together. But all that to say, I'm always impressed with leaders who take the time to think creatively and innovatively of how they can bring people together and understanding the importance of building relationships. So Nausheen did that so nicely. And then, of course, I had to ask her, I said, you got to be on the Faculty Factory podcast. And again, Nausheen, you remember, like, I don't know, what am I talking about? So I finally got you here. I thank you so much. And I think the question, because you are such a rarity in the field, we'd love to hear about your journey. How does a woman get to be a department director in otolaryngology? Can you share a little bit about your story? And along the way, we'd love to kind of hear some pearls of wisdom of what you've learned and how you have adopted or how you would built a leadership identity and your strategy. So thanks again for being here and take it away, Nausheen.
Oh, thank you so much, Kim. It's really an honor. And I hope that sharing my story helps some other woman otolaryngologist or woman in medicine and science see a little bit of themselves in me and perhaps their future as well. So I like to, when I talk about my professional story, I like to start about how I came to the field that I'm in to begin with. Otolaryngology is a very small field in the context of the world of medicine. We are frequently referred to as ENT, although the formal name of the field is Otolaryngology-Head and Neck Surgery. And I like to talk about how I come from a family of singers, and I am the daughter of a really gifted singer. My father has a beautiful voice, and my dad always had this dream when I was really young that when I grow up, he and I would get to sing duets together, some of the songs that he loves. But unfortunately, as I grew up, we learned that I am not a talented singer. I did not inherit that skill or that gift. I mean, I do feel like I have an ear for music and certainly a passion for the arts. And, I play musical instruments. My sisters do, my children do, but I can't sing. So, but
Poor dad.
but
Poor
I
dad.
know. I do feel bad about that. I'll still sing along very poorly, but I not enough to perform with him. But I definitely grew up with an admiration for the human voice as an instrument, and my admiration for that led to my desire to become a professional who cares for singers, since I'm not able to sing myself. And that brought me to my job as a voice surgeon. I'm a laryngologist, so I take care of voice disorders, but also airway and swallowing disorders. And it is a very fulfilling clinical career for me. At the same time, in addition to caring for people who are professional voice users, my admiration for the voice also translated into me really feeling strongly about giving people a voice. So, not just in the literal aspect, but making sure that my friends, my colleagues, my patients always feel like they have the opportunity to be heard. And I think that's what kickstarted my leadership journey, recognizing that being a leader is not about me, but it's an act of service, and it's about giving other people a voice, people who might not otherwise feel like they have the opportunity to be heard. So that started with my patients, but it has continued with my colleagues, the staff I work with, the faculty I work with, residents, medical students. It extends to all of those places. And I am also grateful and very fortunate to have had terrific mentors and sponsors in my career who saw something in me that I didn't really see in myself. I remember having a conversation with with my first boss as a faculty member, my chair. His name is Jack Krause, and I keep in close touch with him to this day as a good friend, mentor, and continued sponsor. And he asked me at that time where I saw myself over the next few years. This was, I think, my first few months or first year in as a junior faculty member. And I think my response was something to the effect of, well, I hope I can become a really skilled and terrific laryngologist. And that was the extent of my career vision for myself. And I remember Jack saying, well, I feel like you'd be a great residency program director. And I thought, oh my goodness, not me in that kind of role. I mean, I'm not meant to be that kind of leader. But suddenly I found myself in the role of assistant residency program director. And a couple years later, I became the residency program director. And it went from being a role that I could never have envisioned myself in to one that I felt I was born to do. I loved it. It was a position that allowed me to combine so many things I enjoy: patient care, teaching, mentorship. I also became our student rotation or clerkship director. So I got to expand my skills and interests in that capacity. Later on, I was recruited to UTRGV, University of Texas Rio Grande Valley School of Medicine, where I served as the Associate Dean of Graduate Medical Education and the Designated Institutional Official, DIO. I also became the chief of what was then the Division of Otolaryngology-Head and Neck Surgery within the Department of Surgery. I had the tremendous opportunity to grow from a division of one person, just me, to a department of close to a dozen people, and eventually became the chair of that department once UT System felt that the division had grown enough to become an independent department. And later, I had really the terrific opportunity to interview for the position of chair at UTMB. UTMB is a historic and landmark institution in the world of otolaryngology. The founding chair was a gentleman by the name of Byron Bailey, who is one of the most well-known otolaryngologists in our specialty. So it's truly an honor now to serve in a department in his footsteps and brought me to where I am today.
Wow, that's a lot. You listed many leadership opportunities, and I love the story. So thank you so much. Of the story, I couldn't help but thinking this is the title of a book. The idea that you care because I couldn't sing, I sought to care for the voices of those who can sing, and then weaving in the giving people opportunity to be heard. So a lot of the voice, singing, speaking, and hearing. I love the play on words there and the how you wove that into your leadership kind of philosophy. So thanks. And also, I couldn't help but notice you said your first opportunity when your mentor said, "That's it." Period at the end of just be a great otolaryngologist. That's all. I can see you being a great clerkship director, and you going, huh? So just kind of like dad saying, I can think you could be a great singer, and you go, really? What's the difference between you realizing, no, I really don't have pitch, or I mean, I could appreciate it, but that's not a gift I have, to the difference in your career? At what point you said, because you said, I realized, oh my gosh, not only am I good at this, I love it. How quickly did you learn that, yes, this is my groove. I'm made to do this. This feels right to me. Almost like, yes, I'm singing on stage and this feels right. You hear these stories of people go, oh, as soon as I started singing in church, I knew this is what I wanted to do. And when did you know, oh, and when did you know it was a thing and that this is what you were meant to do? And then how did you prepare yourself? How did you um, level up? Imagine, obviously, you had your own clerkship when you were a learner and when you were coming up. But how does someone learn how to do all that?
Well, I'll start by saying that I think it was Mark Zuckerberg who said something to the effect of, "We have a hard time. We can say what we'll do in the next year, but we have a hard time saying what our life will be like 5 or 10 years from now." So that short-term versus long-term envisioning for ourselves in our career. I believe that is true for me. I have a hard time seeing beyond, 10 feet ahead. What am I going to be working on 5 or 10 years from now? That's where the importance of mentorship, sponsorship, and coaching comes in, is getting you to see that longer term vision. In terms of understanding, or when I learned how to do what I did, really it was a learning game in progress. So as I did things, I learned from them. You learn perhaps more from your failures than you do from your successes. And that was true for me too. Another thing I believe in the importance of is recognizing when you're in a flow state. Uh, People will often go through their day, doing what they need to do, getting done what they need to get done. If they're like me, being able to check things off their to-do list. I love that. But when you recognize that you're doing something and you are really enjoying yourself, you're not recognizing the passage of time, that's when you're doing something in a flow state. And we don't all have the good fortune of being in a flow state when we're doing what we do for a living. But I recognized I was in a flow state when I was teaching, giving talks, having mentorship conversations with students and residents, helping coach somebody through a challenging decision. Those are the things that I really enjoyed. And that helped me recognize that that type of role, that type of leadership is something that I really enjoy. And I'd like to think something that I'm meant to do.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sheen, how do you talked about mentorship, sponsorship, coaching. Over the years now, in your various leadership roles, what do you see in learners or early career faculty members that makes you go, ah, this looks familiar to me. This is also someone who I'd like to coach into, like your mentor said to you, Nausheen, I feel like you could do more than that. Can you think of a couple, characteristics or traits or something that makes you go, ah, this looks familiar, this sounds familiar, this is someone who will go far, and or the opposite of you're like, oh, geez, this person's going to have a tough time. What are you seeing now with your lens of a leader in other people to maybe who may be listening to this now thinking, well, what do I need to do? Or how does this happen? Or where's my opportunity to improve or be the person like Dr. Jamal is?
I believe it starts with having a thoughtful conversation where you have the opportunity to take a deep dive into whatever topic it is you want to discuss. And it's important for both parties to enter into that conversation with a growth mindset, recognizing that there are opportunities to challenge yourself and grow beyond what you do now and where you are now. I suspect that I did not have a growth mindset when my chair asked me what I wanted to do. I was thinking more with a fixed mindset. Well, I'm a laryngologist and I want to be a really good one, instead of thinking outside of the box about what could happen. I try to listen for that in conversations that I have with others. I try to recognize when somebody is telling me that they're having a hard time making a decision, but it sounds like they have all of the pieces of information they need to take the next step, but perhaps haven't organized all of those pieces or taken that next step in developing the insight to organize those pieces to figure out where the next stage of their journey could or should be. I remember having a conversation with a resident who was having a hard time trying to decide whether to do fellowship or what kind of fellowship he wanted to do. So I had him organize his thoughts with me. I gave him a yellow legal pad and I told him, well, why don't you make a couple of columns? Like, what are the pros and cons of this decision? What are the pros and cons of this other decision? And let's compare those once we talk through each of those lists. Because I could see that he probably knew what he wanted to do, but was too much in his head to make that commitment or to have the courage to say out loud, this is what I want to do. And at the end of organizing our thoughts in that conversation, he looked down at his list and he said, well, Dr. Jamal, now it feels really obvious what I need to do next.
Oh.
And it was great. It was such a fulfilling and energizing conversation for me, I think for both of us. And to this day, when I run into him at meetings, he will say, like, I still remember that yellow legal pad conversation that we had. And he had written me a thank you card actually after he graduated saying, I still have that piece of paper and I use that to think about, how to make decisions going forward. So for me, it was really an experiment. I didn't go into that conversation with a plan of this is how I'm going to help him figure out what he wants to do. We just transformed that conversation into a decision matrix that happened to work for him. And it was really exciting to go through that.
Wow, Dr. Jamal, you are a coach. I'm not sure if you are certification, but that is definitely a coaching mindset of being curious and non-judgmental and thought partnering with someone. So you're also a great coach, and that's definitely a wonderful tool. I love how it's so simple and yet so profound, right? You didn't need an app or a semester long or months long engagement, a yellow pad and a couple lists and a pen. When you've taken some new leadership positions at institutions, what is like the first 6 months? Are you one of those folks, you read a book and you're like, okay, here's my game plan. I'm going to tear the place up. And when I get in, um, bulldoze things, start over? I mean, can you walk us through like this recent first 6 months, or like what is your strategy? What advice would you give for folks who are just starting into being whatever leadership role at a place?
Yeah, I would say that I am definitely not a bull in a china shop type of person. I am a person who likes to take my time to think about things. And then once I've thought about it, to be decisive about the decision that needs to be made. So, like anything, I try to go into a new situation feeling prepared. And when I first got into or knew I was getting into the DIO role, I read the book, The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. And it was really helpful in organizing my thoughts and how to approach a new role. And it helped me feel better about the type of approach I wanted to take to begin with, which was I wanted to do a lot of listening. And that book reinforced that could be a right way to proceed. And for me, it was the right way to proceed. So in each major new leadership role I've taken on, I've tried to approach the new role with a listening tour first. And then as you hear people's stories, their successes, their challenges, sometimes that will lead to a couple of changes you will make up front to try to establish those quick wins. And then as you start to hear themes in talking to a lot of different people, that's when I felt that I had the information, the data, the backing to make bigger changes as well. So that was part of what went into developing the retreat that you and I developed together. I recognized that one of the bigger theme challenges that I was facing in the department was making sure that the department had a positive working culture, that people felt psychologically safe and supported, that morale was high. And those were the things that, as you know, you and I worked to address in those conversations and workshops that we had in the retreat. What helped me in this new job was also the experiences, the successes, but especially the not successes in my last leadership role. Recognizing that it is possible to come on too strong, and it's important to listen first and make decisions afterwards. And those challenges that I faced in my dean role helped me to become a much better chair than I would have if I became a chair as my first major leadership gig.
Oh, very, very, that's good. Looking back, Nausheen, can you reflect on one of those not successes, um, where you implied maybe, coming on too strong? And I'm wondering if you could share, um, maybe not the details of like where you've had some missteps, but what do you do when you're trying to change something? Like clearly, um, you're very strategic. Clearly you're very people centered and all about relationships and community. That's very important to you. So it's almost, on a superficial level, I feel like it's almost impossible for someone like you to fail because you're not power hungry. You're not, you're not steamrolling because of those values that are very really evident. And I know people are listening to this going, yeah, I'm kind of like Dr. Jamal. I can see a lot of that in me, but she has no idea what I'm getting into. This place I'm now inheriting, or now that I have to come here, oh my goodness, I had no idea that drama, 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 drama. So maybe, the not successes, but the change. How do you come into these like prickly kind of conflict situations and people are looking at you like, okay, what you gonna do, Nausheen? Look at this mess. Have at it. Good luck.
I think the listener who feels that way is right, because it's not just about the person in the leadership role, whether it's official or unofficial, but the context matters too. And the context you're in will be a big factor in whether or not you're able to succeed in whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And your words are very kind, but it's absolutely possible for me to fail. And some of the reasons that I failed in certain instances in my previous role are the reasons that I'm a better leader now. I learned to do things differently, and I am more strategic and more people-centric now than I was initially in that role. A major lesson that I learned is understanding how culture can be different across organizations and across organizational units. I came when I became a DIO. I was in a new institution in a new geographic part of the country where the culture was dramatically different from where I was before. And I went into the situation a little blind, assuming that where I worked before, people thought similarly to where I worked now. And that was absolutely not the case, and a big lesson for me to learn. And I saw that again when I was in business school, and the differences in culture between how people outside of medicine think versus how people inside the world of medicine think. I would say within the world of otolaryngology, which admittedly is a fairly selective specialty. It's hard to get into. It's a world of surgeons, and that implies a certain type of mentality and work ethic. For some people that might be positive, for some people that might be negative. But I went into my new role at a new medical school with the mindset of an otolaryngologist, as somebody who had been in a leadership role only within the context of otolaryngology head and neck surgery. And when I went into this new role, I was working with people from all different medical backgrounds and with a different culture. This was no longer the Mid-Atlantic. This was no longer the Eastern US. This was now deep South Texas, in a place that was primarily non-surgeons in the world of medicine. And I didn't recognize it, but I was coming on way too direct and way too intense for people. And I think it was probably appalling to some people, like, who is this like short young woman of color coming on talking to me like this and telling me what to do? And I didn't realize that was going to rub some people the wrong way, but it really did. And I also came on with the mindset of, here's the list of problems, and here are the things that I think are obvious that I need to do, that we need to do to fix it. And that also didn't go over very well with the people that I was working with. What I learned from that is that I have to adjust my approach to change with according to the culture that is going to have to endure or undergo that change. So when I recognized that, for example, there was such and such citation from the ACGME that needed to be addressed, I couldn't just go in there and tell people this is what you need to do to fix it, even if it was apparent to me what we needed to do to fix it. I learned to help people see what I was seeing without me telling them what to see. So bringing people along in a conversation, sort of like the conversation I had had with that resident mentee, but I didn't see these people as people who needed to be mentored and coached. I saw them as colleagues who needed to just understand what the problem was and what needed to be done. So I totally shifted my approach. I recognized that when change absolutely needed to be made, the idea for change and how to accomplish that change needed to come as a grassroots effort, even if I was certain that I knew what needed to be done. And so that was a lesson. And the second lesson was I wasn't always going to be right about what needed to be done. So those were important lessons to learn. And when circumstances later on in the School of Medicine changed or evolved, I should say, to a point where I could see that another set of really big changes needed to happen in the institution, I completely changed my approach. I had one-on-one meetings with people, approached them with curiosity. Here's the situation we're facing. What do you think needs to be done? And I knew going in what the likely decision needed to be. I also knew that that decision was going to be very unpopular and that people would not want to make that decision. But I decided to have these one-on-one conversations with the 80% of people that I knew would be willing to have an honest conversation about it. And just by asking people questions, I got them on their own to come to the decision that I knew nobody wanted to make. And in the end, they were like, oh, I guess this is what we have to do, even though it really sucks that we have to do it. And that was the result of difficult lessons that I learned with other change management that I did not do a good job of, but was able to succeed in the end with the most difficult change management journey that I had to lead. And that was an experience I learned a lot from, and also has helped me become a better chair, where I have to manage change here as well. Fortunately, on a much on a smaller and less severe scale.
Wow, Nausheen, thank you for your honesty and your humility in sharing the story of lessons learned. It's really, I feel like it's a semester long like brain dump that you've just given us on leadership. It's just so powerful, that lesson of wisdom that comes from, a life lived and being introspective. You said the word change a number of times. And I love how you put it in the context of change being inevitable, and not only change from institution to institution, but I know you were on the East Coast, you were at Albert Einstein, you were at UCLA, UPenn, Texas. And so not only geographic change, but political change and health system change, that's inevitable in leadership. And to me, what you're portraying is that the mandate that leaders have to be nimble and recognize that change is going to happen, coupled with the patience, because you kept saying also, I knew what had to happen. I mean, and ACGME, I knew what had to happen. I knew that it was going to be difficult. I knew it was not going to be a hard pill to swallow. So that knowing, and yet the patience of kind of having to temper that leaderly enthusiasm or drive to, like, let's just get it done, but recognizing that you sometimes have to slow the roll of bringing, as you said, people with you and having them see it and yellow pad of paper, this whole thing, so that they can come around to it, so it's not you dropping a hammer. So I imagine that's what the tension is with a leader, of that, oh, I know, I can see, and yet I can't just plow through there because I'm going to mess things all up. So that must be incredibly frustrating at times for a leader to say, oh, I got to slow down because I have to say this thing over and over and over. And I can imagine our leaders at the higher levels, they must have a lot of that same angst of, like, I know what needs to happen here at the institution or on the hospital side, but I can't just plow through here. I have to kind of bring people with me and have all these town halls and say things and message things over and over and over and over.
There's a lot of similarities to negotiation in general. And a big part of negotiation is also expressing curiosity, understanding what's important to the other party, because what you think is important to them may not actually be what is important to them. And that can allow you to come to an arrangement that is mutually beneficial. We're doing that now as our department develops a faculty leave policy. We're in the process of that now. I received the directive from our leadership that we needed to have some guardrails around how people request leave, how much leave we take, et cetera. And I knew that me telling the faculty that these are the new rules, that was not going to go over well, but I knew that something needed to be done. So I instead presented at a faculty meeting and I said, hey, here are these expectations that the academic enterprise and health system leadership have about how we take leave. Here's an example policy that Dr. Hayek has provided from the Department of Medicine. I would like to request volunteers to develop a work group to develop a policy, maybe modified from this sample, that is appropriate for our department. And, I have to take final responsibility for it. So I might revise or edit some parts of it, add things in, take things away. But this needs to be a product that we are all okay with. So I was kind of a little bit surprised, pleasantly surprised that people volunteered to take on more work, essentially, by working on this policy. But it mattered to some faculty, and they wanted to have a voice in how that policy developed. And there were some things that the faculty didn't want to do that I would have put in a policy because they felt it would be detrimental to their wellness. And I recognized it was something that wasn't critical to me anyway. And vice versa. There were things that I said, well, it's really important that we do things this way from an operational standpoint, even though it's not what you want. And they said, okay, we get it. So it has not been finalized, but that has been the way that we approach developing this policy was a direct product of lessons that I learned in the previous stories we were sharing.
Isn't it interesting how I always thought that with leaders, you're hired to make these decisions and you're hired to do this work. And so it almost seems ironic that when we get to be a leader, that when we learn to delegate things, there's always been a part of me like, well, aren't they going to think, isn't that what your job is, Kim? Why are you asking me to do this? Didn't they hire you? That's why you make the big bucks. You're supposed to be doing this work. And then you realize, no, like, just as you said, it's so surprising that people want to stretch. They want to show that they have value above and beyond how we sometimes put people in a box and like, she does these 5 things and that's about it. No, people are also curious. They want to learn more. They want to contribute. So when you ask people for help, ironically, it doesn't weaken you as a leader. It strengthens you because now you're perhaps tapping into previously untapped potential. And people are going, oh, she finally sees, yes, I do have that gift and no one has ever asked me before. Who knew? Like, wow, yeah, I do want to do this. So it empowers us as leaders by bringing the team up with us and equipping everyone else with ownership of something. And then that recognizing and highlighting the added value that they can bring to the team that maybe nobody else tapped into before. So I think it's the irony of asking for help is also it's a gift. So it's not like the leader being lazy, right?
I agree. I think we sometimes worry that delegating will feel like dumping. But if you delegate the right things to the right people, you're actually empowering and not dumping. And if I think something is going to feel like a dump, I'm probably going to just do it myself. And that way, when I delegate something that will help people feel empowered, they will actually look forward to working on that project, or they will be happy to say yes, because I asked for their help because we can all benefit from it, not just me.
This has been a great conversation. One last thing I wanted to highlight that I didn't mention before. When did you decide to get your MBA after the MD? What point did you say, oh, I need to get an MBA, more school?
Yeah, more student loans. I mean, who would have thought that I would have
Oh.
volunteered for homework and loans? Uh, I first thought about getting a degree like an MBA or an MHA when I first became a department chair at a previous institution. And my thoughts about getting an MBA were recognizing that shifting from an educational leadership role to a clinical leadership role really meant that I was becoming a manager of a business unit, and that I needed to better understand finance, accounting, and things of that nature, the technical business stuff. And although I did learn those things in business school, what I really credit my experience in my MBA program the most for is the soft skills, learning leadership skills that I didn't even recognize or realize that I needed to learn. I thought I had that more or less down pat. I mean, shame on me for thinking that. The soft skills, presentation skills, conversational skills. I always used to think, as an introvert, I have always dreaded small talk. It is not something I have enjoyed, like at a party. But that's something I learned how to do in business school too. And really, it just came down to learning to be curious about people. And as it turns out, people love to talk about themselves. I mean, look at me on this podcast, just talking about myself for the past 40 minutes. But I could ask questions of others, and people could tell me their story. And I love listening to other people's stories too. And it makes small talk way easier. So a lot of great soft skills that I picked up on it in business school. And I'm very grateful to Kellogg for that.
Well, folks, you can see why I was so taken with Dr. Nausheen Jamal. Thank you so much for being on the Faculty Factory podcast, Nausheen. I've learned so much from you. You've imparted so much wisdom in such an honest, open way, and it's really important. I thank you for taking the time to do this, and I'm going to leave the parting word to you on the podcast today.
Well, it has been such an honor and a pleasure to have this conversation with you, Kim. Thank you for inviting me. And I hope that all of our early career scientists and physicians out there, especially if you are in a field where you don't see other people like you in the field, I hope there is something in my story that gives you the ability to see beyond what you see already in front of you and accomplish great things in the future. I know you can do it.
Just a quick commercial for our upcoming Faculty Leadership Collaborative Mid-Career Boot Camp. Well, the 3-day mid-career boot camp for associate professors is April 9th to 11th, 2025, 2 to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, all via Zoom. The topics for the mid-career bootcamp will include Leadership Presence and Self-Management by Joe Losey at Pitt, Communicating with Emotional Intelligence with Alice Fornari from Hofstra, Leading Organizational Change with Susan Chubinskaya right here at University of Texas Medical Branch, Conflict Management and Mediation with Dave Usum from Hopkins, Strategic Thinking, Planning, and Negotiating with Rejma Jagzi from Emory, Building and Managing Teams and Projects with Wendy Bennett from Hopkins and Darpan Patel from the University of Texas Medical Branch, Finances and Funds Flow with Vin Pellegrini from Dartmouth, and Creating a Leadership Future, Preparing for Transitions with Archana Chatterjee from Rosalind Franklin. We're also going to have a panel of recently promoted professors who will share their journeys. You'll get 9 contact hours of CME, CNE, and CLS continuing education credits. You've got a curated resource guide, lots of networking opportunities. We have a half hour before, half hour after each day's events for just more community building and networking and Q&A. So go to the facultyfactory.org website. That's facultyfactory.org website. You'll find the link right there on the first page to sign up and share it with your colleagues and friends. Thanks for tuning in to the Faculty Factory podcast. We are a faculty development community sharing tools to build academic leaders in healthcare. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast? Please visit facultyfactory.org/contact and send me a message there. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Office of Faculty Affairs at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas.